Good afternoon. Excuse me. I want to welcome everyone to our fifth installment of our series Racism 101. Today's conversation will be about Thanksgiving, National Day of Mourning. I think that was something that was started actually in 1970. So we're going to look at Thanksgiving maybe from a different lens than some of us have grown up learning about. I want to first introduce, first I want to thank our sponsors, OSU, our partners in this, OSU-Tulsa and the Tri-City Collective. And also I want to welcome Quraysh Lansana, who will be our moderator today. I'll tell you a little bit about him. He is the author of 20 books in poetry, nonfiction, and children's literature. Lansana is a Tulsa Artist Fellow. He's a writer in residence and adjunct professor at Oklahoma State University, Tulsa. A former faculty member of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and the Juilliard School. Lansana is executive producer of KOSU NPR's Focus, Black Oklahoma, and his forthcoming titles include Those Who Stayed, Life in 1921 Tulsa After the Massacre, and Opal's Greenwood Oasis. He is a member of Tri-City Collective, and I do want to mention Opal's Greenwood Oasis is a wonderful children's book. We're doing a pre-sale of Opal's Greenwood Oasis. Quraysh doesn't know I'm I was going to give a plug for his book, but it's a wonderful book. You can get 30% off by putting TK Opal into the website. I understand Quraysh has some new duties at OSU that he might want to tell you about. I don't know. He has a long title that I didn't write down.
I'll tell you later.
Okay. I also want to welcome Elisa LeSieur. She's an academic counselor and pre-collegiate coordinator for OSU-Tulsa and member of OSU's Native American Faculty and Staff Association. Elisa grew up on the Menominee. Sorry, I should have.
Menominee.
Thank you. Reservation in Wisconsin, where she spent the entirety of her childhood and a large portion of her adult life. She now lives in Tulsa and works with students from different backgrounds and always tries to encourage them to embrace their heritage. And I apologize for butchering that name. I also want to welcome Anissia West. And I will need to read her bio, I'm sorry, off the screen here. She's an educator and equity consultant. She serves as coordinator of the student life and student life and engagement for the Tulsa Public Schools District and provides equity-centered school design and intercultural development coaching for organizations locally and nationwide. Through her work, she aims to build bridges toward healing and reconciliation. So I want to welcome our panelists today, and I thank you for being on with us. And I also wanted to let those of you who are listening, if you want to use your chat feature and ask questions or participate in the discussion, make comments, we will try to include those in our discussion throughout the hour. And so, Quraysh.
Thank you, Betty, and welcome, Elisa and Anissia. Thank you for taking the time to engage with us in this conversation, this event. We, as I like to say, when I enter any classroom, which includes these days a Zoom classroom, that I expect to learn as much or more from my students or the folks involved in the Engage as I hope they learned from me. So thank you again and welcome. I want to begin with a poem, which I'm often want to do. And this is a poem called Trail of Tears, Our Removal. And it's by the amazing Indigenous poet Linda Hogan. With lines unseen, the land was broken. When surveyors came, we knew what the prophet had said was true. This land with unseen lines would be taken. So you who live there now, don't forget to love it. Thank it, the place that was once our forest, our ponds, our mosses, the swamplands with birds and more lowly creatures. As for us, we walked into the military strength of hunger and war for that land we still dream. As the ferry crossed the distance, or as the walkers left behind their loved ones, think how we took with us our cats and kittens, the puppies we loved. We were innocent of what we faced along the trail. We took clothing, dishes, thinking there would be something to start a new life, believing justice lived in the world and the horses, so many, one by one stolen, taken by the many thieves. So have compassion for that land, at least. Every step we took was one away from the songs, old dances, memories, some of us dark and not speaking English, some of us white or married to the dark, or children of translators, the half white, all of us watched by America, all of us longing for trees, for shade, homing, rooting, even more for food along the hunger way. You would think those of us born later would fight for justice, for peace, for the new land, its trees being taken. You would think the struggle would be over between the two worlds in this place that is now our knowledge, our new belonging, our being. And we'd never again care for the notion of maps or American wars or the God of their sky, thinking of those things we were forced to leave behind. Living country, stolen home, the world measured inch by inch, mile by mile, hectares, all measurements, even the trail of our tears. With all the new fierce light, heat, drought, the missing water, you'd think in another red century, the old wisdom might exist if we considered enough that even before the new beliefs, we were once whole. But now our bodies and minds remain the measured geography. Again, Linda Hogan from the poem is called Trail of Tears, Our Removal, from the book Dark Sweet. And it's a pretty brilliant poem. It's a very brilliant poem. It's a very moving poem. So I want to engage our conversation, starting with where the poem ends, which is measured geography, and how you all interpret that idea that our bodies are the measured geography, that or that our indigenous family, our indigenous brothers and sisters, their bodies are the measured geography. And Linda is making a comparison, to the land, right? But how does that speak to you all? Let me stop giving you my interpretation. Tell me how that resonated with you. Elisa, go ahead. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Thanks for sharing that poem. I thought it was beautiful. I think of that as I think of mind, body, and spirit being one, and we're connected to the earth, Mother Earth. And it kind of brings us down to just realize and recognize the beauty around us throughout the suppression and everything that had happened, but to know that we were still together, still one, and we were on that trail and going forward.
Anessia, did anything strike you, resonate with you?
Yes, a whole lot of what Eliza said. It's Elisa, right? Or is it Lisa?
Elisa.
It's Elisa. I was like, let me fix that. A whole lot of what Elisa said, but then also this idea that while you can be physically removed from one part of a land, it doesn't mean that you're not still connected to that. It kind of travels with you. And it also just reminds me of when I hear from some of the elders about how how important it was to even bring like elements of ceremonial fires to the new home when they were on that trail. It's important to remain connected to the land, and even if you think you're not, you still are.
What does that mean? What does that mean to both of you? What you just said in this, that even though you don't think you're connected to the land, you still are. What What does that mean?
So I think for me, the only way I can really express it is to go beyond the Americas. You know, I mean, clearly I am a descendant of Black folks from Africa who were brought here in bondage. And I think when I was younger, I thought to myself, I had no connection with Africa. I wanted nothing to do with that, just because that's how I was taught, right? But as I got older, I realized that there is something there that's just like in my body and in my spirit, in my soul, that calls me back there, and eventually I need to go. And the same can be said for me anyway, in my own personal experience with like Georgia and Alabama and other parts of this continent that I know my family also is from. Like when I'm there, there's something about it that feels like home, even though I wasn't raised there. Does that make sense?
I think, I mean, it makes sense to me. And so you're a descendant of freedmen. So I'm wondering as well, is there a dual citizenship that's connected to this geography, right? Are they harmonious energies or feelings or histories, or are they conflicting?
For me, it's not conflicting at all. I feel like I can hold, and I don't think of it in terms of citizenship. It's like genetic memory. I don't know if that's even really a thing, but I like to think it is. I feel like there's memory that lives in your cells, right? And I feel like for me, they exist harmoniously. There's not I don't feel the need to kind of put a higher value on one over the other. I know that that's something that people expect or want, but I don't feel that. I mean, think about it like this. I'm one human. I don't exist in parts. I can't really be divvied up in any kind of way.
I think I'd be terminally frightened if somehow that happened, or if you were cloned in some way. I think I'd be a little shook. But I'm glad you're here in one whole person. So Elisa, what do you think about what does Thanksgiving mean to you? Let's get into the core of this as we preparing for next week, in whatever way that's going to manifest. What is this so-called holiday? That's how I phrase it. What does it mean to you?
So I think of the holiday, the Thanksgiving, as family gathering, getting together, extended family coming together, going to grandma's house. That's how I grew up. And again, I grew up on a reservation. I think as I got older, I realized much more what was behind Thanksgiving. And I'm a little bit anti-Thanksgiving, so I don't necessarily celebrate it now. But I still, will have a meal, but I don't call it Thanksgiving. It's just another time for my family to get together. And now that I'm further away from home, so I'm not in Wisconsin, I'm not close to my grandma location wise, I do have my smaller family here in Oklahoma. So we will be getting together next week, just a few of us. But again, it's just going to be a meal. Honestly, I think about, like with my son, I have a 12-year-old. And I like to ask him, what is he learning in school? What does he know about it? Because then I go around and I'm like, well, actually this happened or this happened. So we have that conversation together. And he's growing up a little bit different than I did, because again, I grew up on the reservation. So I went to school on my reservation, whereas we are here in Tulsa in a city, and my son is not getting the same kind of, the same culture in his education as I did. So it's different. But being so far away, I want to make sure that I'm still trying to share the knowledge that I have with him. So it's a really good conversation. I mean, it's not just surrounded by Thanksgiving. We talk about it throughout the whole year. I always want to know what has he learned, and then I let him know what I know, and then we talk about it.
And have you been satisfied thus far with what he's been taught in school regarding his culture and his history?
Well, because all tribes are different, so he does not. No, it's very. He just did a unit, so we're in Broken Arrow virtual, so he just did a unit in social studies about Native Americans, and I was listening to his video, and I'm like, wait, no, what are you listening to? So I had to kind of cut that off and explain to him. It wasn't in depth at all, obviously, because there's so many different tribes, over 500 tribes in the US. So everyone has different ways, but it was very generic, very just overall, this is basically what happened to everyone, which that's not how it really went. So we are two tribes. So my son and I are both enrolled members of the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin, and we are descendants of the Menominee Nation, which is where I grew up. So I do try to incorporate my knowledge that I learned through growing up with him. But yeah, am I satisfied with the education so far? No, I was a little saddened last week when, again, he did that unit in social studies, and it was very bland, and it didn't have any real information that I think that students can get if maybe the curriculum was a little more, maybe towards the Oklahoma tribes even, and it wasn't that.
And Anissia, I mean, we're all educators here on this conversation. So Anissia, what is your take on what she just said in terms of, I mean, is that you are a TPS employee and have been for a minute. And so would that is what she talked about, what you essentially have experienced or what's happening in the district?
I would say not just for the district, but just public education and possibly education as a whole, unless you're attending a school and that is like really, really well centered around a particular tribal culture, odds are you're not receiving any sort of substantial or high quality education around Native issues in general. I know when I was a little person, I was born in Chicago. So when I was super young in Chicago, there was no talk of Native anything in our schools. And then when I moved to Oklahoma initially, I think I was like kindergarten, first grade. And we moved to Stillwater and it was just bizarre stuff. I remember the activity around like turning a paper bag into a leather vest, and like there were feathers, like it was just weird, and I had never seen or heard anything like it. And I remember talking to like family about it, and they were like, we don't know what any of this is either. And so yeah, like the school system is really not set up really well to honor Native cultures, let alone teach about them. And so I say that not so much about Tulsa Public Schools specifically, but just about public education in general. I would say probably every school district in the state has a long ways to go, probably in the country as well.
And, I often, I think in one of our early conversations that Betty and I, in which Betty and I engaged, we were talking specifically about sort of Black lives, right? And I said that, until African-American history is not an elective, but a requirement, we won't know. Folks won't know and won't seek to pursue that knowledge. But we are in Oklahoma, right? We are in a place that was called Indian Territory before it was a state. We are in the place that is both the point of origin and the repository for the two earliest and largest ethnic cleansing actions in the history of this country. And it's still a struggle to learn about the folks who were involved in that removal and in both removals, right? And that just doesn't seem to add up. So why, in your opinions, is this history not much more than a blip, a unit, right? In the educational on the educational calendar, Lisa? What do you think? And what do we need to do to change it?
You know, I'm just as surprised as you. So I wanted to share a little story. You know, Anissia mentioned she grew up in Chicago or was born there. I actually lived in Chicago for a few years in my late teens. And I remember introducing myself, and I always had people speak Spanish to me. And I'm like, I do not speak Spanish, I'm sorry. And one of my friend that I made there, when I told her, you know, I'm Native American, she's like, what? You exist? And I'm like, yes. She was really surprised and amazed. And the questions that she asked me were very outdated. And I mean, I wasn't offended. I was actually very happy that she was asking and inquiring to learn, because she was like, do you guys live in houses? Do you have electricity? You know, do you have a car? Do you drive cars? Like, she was like, and she was very respectful. But she just really wanted to know, because when she pictures Native Americans, she's thinking wigwams, teepees, longhouses. You know, we're wearing our buckskin clothing. So that in her mind was like what a Native American should or would look like in her opinion. So it was really great interaction, and we still talk about that conversation. But it's true. I coming from Wisconsin, they really have an Indian education program that I feel is very forward thinking. They do a summer summit every summer, a week-long summit that you attend, and you learn about all the tribes, the 12 tribes in Wisconsin. It's for educators, and it's really great. It's a great experience. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about my own tribe, because I didn't know enough, or a lot that I thought I should know. So it was a great experience, and I feel like they really try to push the Native American education in all the schools. So when I came to Oklahoma, and I'm like, I'm expecting a lot more, because you have 39 tribes and you are, you know, Indian territory, you think about all that. So when I came, I was like, oh, okay. So I think we definitely have a long way to go, not just Oklahoma, not just Wisconsin. Again, like Anissia said, throughout the whole US, I'd be interested in, I mean, I think we should make that a priority for sure, because if we don't talk about it, we're going to forget about it. And as you can see, it has been forgotten.
Anissia, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just to whip back around to your question about like why and how we're here. I think it's just really important just to state that white supremacy culture puts us here. Our ed system is very much designed to highlight the histories that are very like white centered, and to write it in a way that's more geared towards the white gaze even. So, you know, when a child of any racial background that's not white picks up a US history book, the odds of them feeling like these words are written for them is really low. And so I think with Native history and culture, it's no different. It may be worse. And I would say maybe worse, partly because it's even more of a slap on the face. Like we're here, you know what I mean? And I also think that it's just part of that attempt, like a sort of formalized attempt to erase identities and histories and to deal and grapple with the truth.
Betty, were you going to add something? It looks like you were about to. You're muted though, Betty.
Yeah,
There you go.
I'm unmuting. I wanted to ask all of you, I guess, in light of Black Lives Matter and maybe more national, even worldwide focus on inequities. Do you feel that there's more openness to changing that curriculum? Or I mean, I have always felt that, Black Pride Week or Native American Day, or that just never made sense to me. It should be infused as all part of the truth of the curriculum, rather than pulled out, plucked out, to say, oh, we've done that, we covered it. Do you feel that there's more willingness maybe for people to change that and to think more in equitable terms and in terms of truth? So I'll mute myself.
It's hard to know how to navigate, who to speak next. But I would say that the problem isn't about like willingness even. It's a lack of even drive for that to be a priority. I feel like if someone created a curriculum and dropped it in people's laps, someone might pick it up and run with it. But is there a group of folks or a wide range of people who are out there saying, hey, let's create this and let's ensure that it happens? I don't see that. I haven't seen it yet. I see people saying it needs to happen, but I don't see people doing the footwork, if that makes sense. And I feel like in order for it to happen, you have to have a whole lot more than will, Anyway, that's just my thought.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. I feel like if we don't, my follow-up question is, does the state of Oklahoma public school system have a liaison or someone who is supposed to be doing some of that? I mean, I guess if we're a parent and we want this change, who do we go to? How do we get there? That would be my question as a parent, because of course I'm interested in moving it forward, but again, mine stops at where do I even start? Who's my contact person? Is it the counselor at the school, the principal? So I think getting some direction in that area may help get the ball moving.
Yeah, and then let's say a group of folks get together and draft a curriculum, or they say they want to, because perhaps they have the knowledge and they have the skill and they have the will, right? They want to do it, but these things also require funding. And when it comes to ed dollars and how to allocate them, all those things come down to priority. And from what I've seen, just things involving people of color in general are typically not the priority, particularly when we're talking about history. I just don't see it as a priority.
Which is a shame, right? Because history, is the answer to almost every question, right? We are here where we are today, right now, because of what preceded us, right? There's no disconnect, right? And only someone who is interested in authoritarian control would separate a people from its history and from its culture, right? Period. And then we've seen that manifest so many times over the course of human history. I want to switch gears for a second, but I do want to, and this, just know that I'm going to come back to you about the question about how you think about Thanksgiving. So just know you're not off the hook. I was listening to NPR a couple weeks ago, and which is no surprise since we have a show on NPR, Anissia. But I was listening to NPR, and there was an interview, a long interview, I think on Fresh Air or something, with a native or an indigenous gospel singer, right? And so a man who had a very interesting sort of story to tell or take on why he was singing Christian songs, right? Some old hymns, some, things that he'd written very much in the very old school sort of Christian tradition. And he had an amazing voice. And it sounded, he's a man who would overcome alcoholism. So he experienced all kind of personal pain in various ways, and that Jesus the Christ saved him, and he was very sincere. But I started thinking about it, and I think when the interviewer may have asked him, how do you feel about the fact that you are singing the music, right? You are singing the songs that you were taught in the schools that cut your hair, stripped you of your name, stripped you of anything that you know with your culture, and you're singing them with all of this joy and I don't know, joy, I guess. So I want to put that to you too about, it's a conundrum, and there are so many in the lives of people of color. We have so many conundrums that are part of our everyday. But that's one that struck me, right? I want to know what you two think about that, about what this man was doing, singing this Christian music.
I am not religious at all. And I get a kind of a shock when I'm around here in Oklahoma when I say that, because I heard it's the Bible Belt. I never knew what that was. So I'm like, oh, but I'm not religious. I did not grow up religious. My grandma is very religious, Catholic, goes to church. I respect her, view. And I do go to church with her once in a while. But I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Indian Horse, but it is a great movie. It is very sad. It goes through the struggles of an Indigenous boy in Canada who went to a residential school and experienced all of the bad things. But it really broke my heart. And stuff like that really makes me, against religion. But at the same time, I respect other people's views and their thoughts and what they believe in. But that's something that's hard for me because, again, my very close family, they're very religious. But I'm always like, nope, don't pray, don't, I don't do that. So it's a really touchy subject, but it irks me a little bit to see it, but I have to be respectful. I don't choose that way of life though.
Yeah, very much the same. I see that we have a lot in common. So I grew up with my grandparents, living with my grandparents off and on. My grandfather, very much non-religious at all. I would say he's very much more like the Creek person, more Muskogee in his views. My grandmother, on the other hand, very, very devout Catholic. And so I grew up in and out of the Catholic Church with her, but also non-religious. I'm like one of the first of the grandkids that did not go to Catholic school. I am not bothered by that at all. I would say when I was younger, I definitely gave people, not just Native, but just like people of color, kind of the side eye for Christianity. I did that. I don't do that anymore. I understand that, religion is really complex, right? I can make my decisions for me. I choose not to really take on the beliefs and values of my oppressor. That's my choice. But I understand that other people have found some sort of like solace or motivation or healing in Christianity. And I think that people just need to do what they need to do in order to be well. There are some people who would not be alive today if it weren't for whatever religion they've chosen. That's how they feel and they believe in. And I think, they have that right to do that. I just choose not to.
Which brings us right back to this idea of whatever Thanksgiving is, right? because this holiday or so-called holiday, which, really is about, the meal, the feast after a slaughter, right? A massacre, and is somehow, not even somehow, is linked from its origins to, the folks who came over who were being exiled for their religious beliefs, right? To come over to this new world, and then, massacre, annihilate millions of folks who are already here, in the name of they were still battling out what kind of Jesus they were gonna follow, right? And did, and probably, and still are, now that you now, welcome to the Bible Belt list. And now you understand what it is. It's like, my Jesus is bigger than your Jesus. Let's put them in a match, right? Let's box, you know what I mean? So, and here we are, and now we are in 2020. And this thing that happens every November still has some semblance, right? Something to do with the religion of Christianity, something to do with family, a family gathering, and something to do with eating a lot of, I'm going to say it in this, a lot of dead fowl, right? So what is, yeah, I said it, so you can talk
You
back.
you gotta stop that.
I'm not going to stop. All right. So since you're talking in this, what does this day mean to you? What does Thanksgiving mean to you?
Like, it means having a day off when everyone else has a day off and you happen to be able to get together. That's what it means to me. I mean, I don't place any sort of religious connotations on it. I don't know that I ever did, even when I lived in a home with a very religious person. I don't recall my grandmother making Thanksgiving religious, because it's not like it's a Catholic holiday or anything. But we did eat. Like, we ate, and we ate a lot. It was great. But I don't know. I don't really take it very seriously as a holiday, to the point where I, like, right now, we're in a pandemic and people are being able, like, to be careful about gathering, right? And some people are sad that they won't be able to get together for Thanksgiving in the way that they normally would. I'm not, actually. I'm not bothered by it at all. I feel like there's another day that I can get together with family and cook a lot of the exact same foods that I would cook on that day otherwise. So yeah, it doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. And really hasn't since I was a kid. And when it did, it just meant it was the day when a whole lot of people would be, like, gathered at my grandmother's house. It's like time for everyone to go and visit our matriarch, right?
Right.
But now that she has passed and is no longer with us, that's not a thing.
So for neither of you, growing up, was there any sort of introduction of the history or the culture of the origins of the first Thanksgiving? With both of you having indigenous blood in your veins, you're both saying to us that none of that real history of this day, this holiday, was introduced to you at all. Is that right?
Was it introduced to us? I mean, yeah. It was. Like, I learned true history. It just isn't positive. So why embrace it?
Yeah, mine, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say mine. So I did attend school on the reservation. It's a public school, so anyone can attend. But obviously I think the introduction of Thanksgiving was the truth. So I don't feel like I was given, like, fake facts and pilgrims and all nice and fun. It was pretty forthcoming. which I'm thankful for, to receive that education.
And how old were you, or in what grade were you when you were introduced to that truth, Elisa?
I maybe second or third grade,
Wow.
as far as I can think back. The good thing about it is I always took language and culture, like it was part of the curriculum in elementary and middle school. In high school, I took language for 2 years. So it was an elective, but Native American history was a required class. So I got to learn that. And plus our Menominee history also was another required class. So definitely thankful for that education I received there.
Do you feel like at second grade you could handle the truth, to borrow a phrase?
Maybe not handle, maybe not completely understand everything. But I think the way it was presented wasn't as harsh as eventually we continued learning in the other grades.
Okay.
But I think just knowing and growing up there, it's pretty forthcoming. You learn a lot. You learn about your culture, your history. So maybe at that time, maybe I'm thinking at the time it wasn't harsh, and maybe it really was. I don't know, but I feel like it was fine for me.
So it's sort of scaffolding, sort of building on it every year to learn more and more and go deeper and deeper per grade level. And this, so what do you think, like thinking about our book, Opal's Greenwood Oasis, right? Which is about a little girl growing up in Greenwood on the day before the massacre happens, right? And so our book is really sort of the third grade, the sixth grade, seventh grade pocket. And we stop, before really introducing the massacre. On the last page of the book, you see a photo from the Historical Society of what Greenwood looked like less than a day later, right? So, and we did that thinking about that kids in that third grade to sixth grade range might not be able to handle the enormity and the horror of the massacre, although are we doing them a disservice? So my question connects to, the true history of Indigenous First Nation folks in this country. Like how young is too soon? And when you think our old folks are old enough to really sort of begin to ascertain and understand this history?
Oh, wow. Okay, so to full disclosure, I've never taught elementary, but I did raise some children of my own, and they were pretty young when they started learning about these things. I don't know. I kind of think that young people are pretty resilient. I think there's ways to tell them tell them the truth. You don't have to be super gory about it, and you don't have to provide a whole lot of imagery. I think the imagery and sounds are things that really can hit young people little people anyway, in a really hard way. But I think it's okay at a young age to say, a group of people were upset with another group of people for whatever reason that is, and that that they hurt people. Gosh, I think I was probably in second grade when I first learned about like concentration camps. I wonder, why is it that we're more likely to teach younger age students about, what happened to Jewish people, but not what happened to Black and Brown or Native people. If that makes sense. Yeah, I wouldn't say that through your book you're doing a disservice, because it's a great book, but I think that there is still room to go further with young people.
Elisa, anything you want to add to that?
I was thinking the same thing. Like, what is the difference between us learning, like you said, concentration camps and everything that happened there, or whatever, anything else in history that was horrible? How How is that any different than teaching Native history or, any other history?
Yeah. How is it different? Is it because of the lens, the gaze that's put on it, whose history is being explored or examined, and the privilege of, again, history is all, and up until the last century, right? History has generally been written by the oppressor and rarely the oppressed. It's only really been in the last century or so, since maybe 150 years, right? That the oppressed actually have been given platforms, actually took platforms, made platforms for their voices, for our voices to be heard. And so that's a long head start, right? That's a long head start, right? While most of us were, and our ancestors were either in the fields or working in the big house or dead, right? So they had a long head start on this. And so, but that head start is generally in this country, it is still the foundation for education at every level, right? That lens is still the foundation for education at every level, for the most part. Again, Alyssa, I'm your neighbor at OSU-Tulsa. Our Center for Africana Studies is moving from Stillwater to Tulsa. But again, African American Studies, Africana Studies, Native American Studies, or Indigenous Studies, they're electives, right? They're not required, right? And so at that point, unless we, pull a full junta, right, and change the path, that's the way things are going to be. I don't know, maybe we need to think about this junta, but I'm not going to pull y'all into anything that you're not ready to be a part of. Betty, we had a comment or a question.
We do have a comment. I'll read it to you. You might want to comment on the comment. Thanksgiving is an artificially introduced day infused with feasting and gathering with a religious purpose instead of a religious purpose instead of a religious purpose. People will define it how they want in each of their circles. No day should be an exclusive day of thanks when all days can be used to be thankful or religiously thankful in some spheres. So they're sort of putting Thanksgiving into a generic, it's become sort of a generic day of feasting, maybe for some people, I don't know. I had a question. I'm curious. I mean, there seems to be, Elisa had this, it sounds like a very truthful education where many of us were miseducated, I feel, and feel somewhat cheated by that. Were the public schools throughout, was it just on the reservation that you were taught in this way? And also, it seems to take some leadership to create that truthful lens rather than the oppressor lens. But was it leadership in the state that created that change or that ability to teach in a truthful way?
A good question. So I want to say in the late 80s, the state of Wisconsin passed what's called Act 31, which requires public schools to teach Native American history. Now, that does not mean that they have to follow a specific or certain curriculum, but at least it's required in some aspect. I don't know if it's every grade, but I know there's some specific grade levels that you have to, have that. As far as curriculum, I feel like, I think it was the district that I was in, maybe they were the one who created the curriculum. I'm not too sure on that, but that's a great question. I feel, again, with the Act 31, requiring schools to teach Native American history was a really big step, and they're still working on that. Again, there's a liaison for the whole public school system, who really works hard on, again, putting on a summit, putting on different stuff like this, to get, educators some information and resources that they can use in the classroom.
I think that comment, thank you for reading that comment, Betty. I think that comment was pretty interesting. I've sort of been ruminating on it since you read it, because, and I wanted to get your take on this. To me, that comment, which suggested, that Thanksgiving is a-religious and so on and so on. I mean, it started to sound to me like the comment was describing Black Friday, right? Like there was nothing, there was nothing like in there. Actually, maybe Black Friday was more exciting to people, because things are on sale, right? So I don't know. What do you all think about that comment?
I mean, it's not a religious holiday, technically.
Right.
I think a lot of people will infuse religion into every aspect of their life, including non-religious holidays. So there's that. So it's not like they've said anything that's not true. I think the challenge for me comes in how the stories we tell about what Thanksgiving is and the origins of it, and are we being honest? I feel like the comment from the viewer is a more honest representation of what Thanksgiving is and or could be, depending on who you are and how you identify. But I don't think it's what people are learning as they grow up. Maybe some people, but I think some schools are still painting this really bizarre story about pilgrims and natives having, a cornucopia on a table. So that's strange and not true.
Yeah. And who benefits from that? Who benefits from that spin on this story, right? Elisa, you have any thoughts on that?
I have to agree with everything. When you say who benefits from that story, it's kind of putting, I don't know, like a blindfold over someone and let's just not talk about this and let's move on to something else. So yeah, it's not a religious holiday at all. Or I don't even call it a holiday. It's just like you said, it's an extended weekend for me, which I enjoy, and a dinner.
I think that also, like, that question about who benefits from this kind of brings us back to Black Friday in a way, though, because who benefits from it is whoever's making money off of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, name another reason to buy one of those porn-looking things to put on your table, or to buy a whole bunch of little mini pumpkins. Why else, if not for the imagery that we've seen of, this immaculate table,
Yeah, I mean, we don't even get Charlie Brown on free TV anymore, right? You got to go to cable to get Charlie Brown, right? I mean, what kind of bum deal is that? You know what I mean? That to me speaks to the depth of what we've become, right? That was I don't know about y'all, but Charlie Brown Thanksgiving is a classic thing to me, right? Charlie Brown Christmas is also a classic thing to me, but we'll talk about Christmas next month because I'm not even ready to start even thinking about. I can't even believe I spoke those words in my mouth already, particularly because we started seeing Christmas commercials before Halloween. It's like, slow down. Right? Slow down. Okay, Anissia, thank you for participating. Thank you for being here and for hanging out. We're about to wrap up, but I know if you've got to go, you got to go. So thank you, Anissia, for hanging out with us. You get to cheat on that last question I was going to ask.
Well, no, go give me the question and then I'll respond. You said you got a question?
Yeah, I want you to give me an elder story, like a piece of elder wisdom from your from your childhood or something that an elder has said to you recently regarding anything, but certainly in relationship to what we're discussing today? A little nugget, a little wisdom. Got any elder wisdom?
Related to what we're discussing right now?
Oh, it doesn't have to be specifically. I'll give you a pass because you got to go.
Okay. You know, it's not really related, or maybe loosely related, and I'm not going to give you a whole story, but I would say the best piece of wisdom that anyone has really ever given me, that I would consider my elder, but he might not like that classification. So if that's the case, then I'm sorry in advance. But one person once told me, and actually I'm gonna name him, Lewis Gray, once told me, just because somebody wants to go to Crazy Town doesn't mean you have to go there with them. So basically, you know, like people might act kind of out of pocket here and there, but it's important for you to make, you know, that decision as to whether or not you want to engage in that or not. And you absolutely don't have to. And there was something about that that was incredibly liberating. So I'm sharing it with you guys.
Thank you, Anissia, and thanks for hanging out. Elisa, do you have a piece of elder wisdom for us as we prepare to sign off?
Yeah, one that was recently brought to my attention after I disclosed some things that were happening. I feel like they're kind of like a mentor to me, but really it was stand for what you believe in, even if you have no one behind you. So I feel that speaks volumes in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I love that. I love both of them. Thank you. I know we're at the end of our time. Quraysh, thank you as always. You were amazing. Thank OSU-Tulsa, Tri-Cities Collective, Elisa, Elisa, Anissia. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Next month, we'll be doing we'll be talking about the holidays, about Christmas. So some of those, these same questions might come up. And it is a religious holiday, so we'll be talking about some other religions. So I want to invite all of you back next month, and I want to thank everybody for joining us for this session. It was great. I always learn a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thanks for inviting me. You have a great day.
Thanks for joining us, Elisa.